fifth filter that we want to go through is something called mindset. And quite frankly, this is the most difficult of all of the filters because there's so much that makes up our mindset. How do we think? What is our attitude and our disposition towards certain things? And what's developed that? What kind of cultural backgrounds have we come from? What language do we use? What is the background of my family relationships or any kind of personal involvement, let's say, for instance, in education? All of those things matter in terms of mindset. We could do a whole course just on mindset by itself. But I wanted to give you a snapshot of what that actually looks like. And in order to do that, I need to read you a story. Now, this is entitled The Lithuanian Legend, and it goes like this. Several centuries ago, a curious but deadly plague appeared in a small village in Lithuania. What was curious about the disease was its grip on its victim. As soon as a person contracted it, he would go into a very deep, almost death-like coma. Most individuals would die within 24 hours, but occasionally a hardy soul would make it back to the full bloom of health. The problem was that since early 18th century medical technology was not very advanced, the unafflicted had quite a difficult time telling whether a victim was dead or alive. This didn't matter too much, though, because most of the people were, in fact, dead. Then one day, it was discovered that someone had been buried alive. This alarmed the townspeople, so they called a town meeting to decide what should be done to prevent such a situation from happening again. After much discussion, most people agreed on the following solution. They decided to put food and water in every casket next to the body. They would then put an air hole up from the casket to the earth's surface, and a string attached to a bell above the ground was also created so that the grave could be dug up if need be. These procedures would be expensive, but they would be more than worthwhile if they would save some people's lives. Another group came up with a second, less expensive, right answer. They proposed implanting a 12-inch long stake in every coffin lid, directly over where the victim's heart would be. Then, whatever doubts there were about whether the person was dead or alive would be eliminated as soon as the coffin lid was closed. Now that might sound like a very strange story. It's actually a true legend. What's interesting, though, is the mindset between the two groups. Obviously, you have one group who cares about saving lives and the other group limiting expenses. So maybe you can think about it in terms of personhood versus productivity. What's more important to any given individual? Mindset is constructed by lots of different points of view, lots of ideas that go into this. Everything from the environment that you live in, to the religious views that you have, to what you believe about the human mind, to our beliefs about community. All of these kinds of things, and so many more, fit into this category. I wanted just to give you another couple of snapshots of this. First, I wanted to show you my favorite picture of all time. My son just purchased this for me, and we had it framed. This is by the Impressionist Pissarro. And Pissarro drew, or I should say painted, this portrait called The Red Roofs. It's Impressionism. It's my favorite era of art, Impressionism. And this, of all of the paintings, is my favorite painting of all time. The Impressionists had their own mindset. They believed that a person should individually interpret anything that they saw around them in life. So if you looked closely, you would notice that there aren't really square edges on all of the buildings, and all of the trees are just dabs of little bits of paint. That was Impressionism. That was how they viewed their world. That is a mindset. Here's another. Perhaps you've seen this guy before, the Thinker. This Thinker statue was actually required or asked of a very famous French sculptor whose name was Rodin, R-O-D-I-N. And it was the Catholic Church that actually asked him to produce this particular sculpture. Now, what's interesting about this is that the Catholic Church asked that he have this sculpture considering the gates of a cathedral. Now, on the gates of the cathedral were all kinds of images of eternal damnation and hellfire. And so the Catholic Church wanted the thinker to actually consider his eternal soul, his eternal destiny. This is certainly a mindset. Whether you think about the thinker, or whether you think about Pissarro's red roofs, or you think about the Lithuanian legend, all of these things are so influenced by so many other aspects of our lives that we need to take all of that into account. That's the fifth filter, one that perhaps will give us pause and perhaps give us opportunity to think further about how is my own life constructed and my own thoughts in that way constructed as well.